morning everyone, welcome to this panel discussion for international trade theories and policies. My name is Sonam and I will be your moderator today. Our topic today is one of the most debated issues in the global economic policy, that is tariff. A tariff are the taxes imposed on imported goods, and they have been used for nations for centuries to protect domestic industries, generate revenues, and even as a tool of geopolitical negotiation. Yet, to protect domestic industries, economics remain divided on their merits. Joining me today are the four panelists with distinct perspectives. Soma will open with a global overview and the case for tariff. Sonam Shezong will present the argument against tariff. Hazim will then examine the Bhutan's specific context, and finally Tenzin will offer our policy recommendation for Bhutan. So now let's begin. Soma, please set the stage for us.
Thank you, Sonam. To understand tariff, we must first appreciate how widespread they are. Tariffs are used by almost every country in the world. According to the World Trade Organization, the average tariff rate globally is about 9%, but it's very different from country to country. For example, the United States has imposed tariff as high as 25% on the steel and aluminum from China for security reasons. India has very high tariffs, especially on agricultural goods, sometimes above 50%. The European Union also uses tariffs to protect its internal market. In 2025, the United States even increased the tariffs on some Chinese goods to over 100%, which led to great trade conflict. This shows that tariffs are still very important in global trade. Now, why do countries use tariff is, first there is infant industry agreement. This idea was developed by Alexander Hamilton and later supported by Friedrich List. It means that new industries in developing countries need protection at the beginning because they cannot compete with strong foreign companies. Tariffs help this industry grow and become competitive. For example, South Korea used this strategy to develop its electronic and car industries. Second, tariff helps government earn money. In developing countries where tax systems are not very strong, tariffs are an easy way to collect revenue. Even Bhutan collects money from import duties. Third, tariffs help protect national security. Countries want to produce important goods like food, defense equipment, and energy within their own border instead of depending on other countries. Fourth, tariffs can reduce trade deficits. When imports become expensive, people buy fewer foreign goods, which can help reduce the gap between import and exports.
Thank you so much. You have made a strong case for tariff, infant industry protection, revenue generation, industry security, and deficit correction. And now, Sonam Shezong, I understand that you have a different perspective, so please, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Sonam. While some of points are valid in some situations, many economists warn against depending too much on tariffs. So to point out some of the reasons why, first, tariff reduces economic efficiency. According to David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage, free trade allows countries to focus on producing goods they make best and trade for the rest. So tariffs interfere in this system by making imported goods more expensive, which pushes consumers to buy less efficient or more costly local products. Second, tariff increases the price for consumers and businesses. So for example, when the government put tariffs on imported steel, industries like car manufacturing and construction had to pay more for the materials. So these higher costs are then passed on the consumers through higher prices. So a 2025 study also suggests that US tariffs on Chinese goods increases the cost for American household by about USD 1,300 per year. Moreover, the tariff often lead to retaliation. So the best example could be the China-United States trade war. So when the US imposed tariffs, China responded with tariffs on American products such as soybeans, aircraft, and cars. So this hurt businesses in both countries and reduced trade overall. So additionally to that, the too much protection can make industries less competitive. So if local industries are protected from foreign competition for too long, they may not feel the need to improve quality, reduce costs, or innovate. So, for example, India's automobile industry remained weak in the global market for many years because of the high tariff protection. Furthermore, tariff can also hurt developing countries. So, when developed countries impose tariffs on goods from poorer nations, it becomes harder for those countries to export their products and grow economically. That is why the organizations like World Trade Organization and the International Monetary Fund usually support reducing tariffs. So in short, while tariffs may provide short-term protection to domestic industry, they can also create long-term problems such as higher prices, low efficiency, trade conflicts, and slow innovation.
Excellent, Sona. Now we have two clear perspectives: a tariff as a protective and revenue tool on the other hand, and tariff as an inefficiency creating distortion on the other. So now, Hazim, how does this debate apply specifically to the Bhutan situation?
Thank you for this opportunity. As mentioned, Bhutan presents a unique case that makes the tariff debate particularly refined. Let us start with Bhutan's trade reality. Bhutan trade deficit has been persistently large. In 2023, imports exceeded exports by over goodness knows around 50 billion. We import fuel, vehicle, machinery, food and manufactured goods at scale, while our exports are heavily concentrated in hydropower electricity, ferrosilicon and few agriculture products. Over 85% of our trade is with India. Bhutan applies the South Asian Free Trade Area or SAFTA framework and has a bilateral free trade arrangement with India, meaning most Indian goods enter Bhutan duty-free or at a very low rate. For non-Indian imports, Bhutan applies its own custom duty schedule, which ranges from 0% on essential capital goods to 30% or more on the luxury and non-essential items. So what does this mean for the tariff debate? Bhutan already used tariff strategically to some extent. However, critical question is, are these tariffs effective, well-targeted and sufficient given the economic condition? The challenges are that because most of our imports come from India under free trade agreement, rising tariff broadly has limited impact. We cannot easily raise tariff on Indian goods without renegotiating our bilateral treaty. For third country imports, higher tariffs are more flexible, but would only affect the smaller portion of our import bill. Additionally, Bhutan's graduation from least developed country status by 2026 means that the preferential trade benefits we currently receive from other countries will gradually erode. This makes proactive tariff policy even more critical.
Thank you, Hazim. You have given us a clear picture of the Bhutan's existing tariff landscape and its limitation. And now, Tenzin, given all of this, the global argument for and against tariff and Bhutan's specific context, what is your overall recommendation for this?
Thank you. So yes, Bhutan should adopt and refine tariff policies, but in a targeted, strategic and time-bound manner, rather than a blanket protectionist tool. So here is my specific recommendations. First, rise tariff on non-essential luxury imports. Bhutan currently imports large volumes of high-end vehicles, alcohols, tobacco, and luxury electronics. These goods drain foreign exchange without contributing to productive capacity. Rising tariff on this category to 40 to 50% or higher would reduce the import expenditure and conserve foreign exchange reserve and simultaneously generate additional fiscal revenue. This both justified, practically feasible, including under our India Free Trade Agreement, which has carve-outs for such goods. Second, maintain low or zero tariff on capital goods and raw materials, machinery industries, equipment, and raw materials needed for domestic production should remain tariff-free or subject to minimal duties. This encourages domestic investment and lowers the cost of setting up industries, aligned with the infant industry argument in a smart way. Third, apply productive tariffs selectively on important competing sectors for where Bhutan has genuine productive potentials, such as dairy, vegetable, and light manufacturing. However, this tariff must be time limited with clear sunset clauses to avoid inefficiency and complacency traps Son Chosin described. And fourth, engage proactively in trade negotiation. As Bhutan graduates from LCD status, we must negotiate tariff concession with trading partners to preserve market access for our export, especially organic produce, handicrafts, and digital services. The theoretical justification draws on the infant industry argument for selective protection and the optimal tariff theory for revenue maximizing on luxury goods. We must avoid a blanket protectionist approach, the risks WTO disputes and retaliatory tariffs from our trading partners.
Thank you. A targeted, selective, and a time-bound tariff strategy makes a great deal of sense for Bhutan's circumstances. So now, before we close, let me pose one quick question to the panel. Given the US-China trade war as a cautionary example, what is the single biggest risk Bhutan must watch out for when implementing tariff policies? So, Soma, you can start with briefly.
The single biggest risk could be overprotection. If tariffs is too long, domestic industry becomes dependent and never become globally competitive. Exactly, that is what we want to avoid.
The risk could be stagnation. Even a small country like Bhutan must be cautious not to promote treaty partners, especially India, which is the lifeline for our trade.
I think the biggest risk Bhutan must consider is the consumer welfare. High tariff prices for ordinary Bhutanese people. Any tariff policy must balance the protection of industry against the cost of living impact on households.
So the risk that Bhutan is facing is the WTO confines. As Bhutan depends its global integration, our tariff policies must remain within bond rates and consistent with our international commitments.
Wonderful. Today's discussion has covered the tariff debate comprehensively from global trend to the Bhutan's specific context and from theoretical foundation to actionable recommendations. So to summarize the key takeaways, first, tariffs are powerful but double-edged policy instrument used globally with both strong justification and significant risks. Arguments for the tariff include infant industry protection, revenue generation, national security, and the deficit correction. The arguments against tariff highlight consumer price increases, efficiency losses, retaliation risks, and innovation stagnation. And for Bhutan, a targeted tariff strategy is recommended. Higher tariff on luxury non-essential, zero tariff on capital goods, selective time-limited protection for imported competing sectors, and proactive trade negotiations to safeguard export market access. Now, I would like to open the floor for the questions, and if anything was unclear or if you would like to hear more details, please you can ask.
My question is, what are the primary economic arguments in favor of implementing tariffs?
Thank you for your questions. The sources highlight several key justifications for tariffs, including infant industry arguments, which suggest that young industry need temporary protections to grow and eventually compete globally. Additionally, tariffs are used to generate government revenue, protect national security by ensuring domestic productions of vital goods such as food and energy, and also help correct the trade deficits by making imports more expensive.
I'd like to know what specific strategy is recommended for Bhutan's tariff policy. The panel recommends a targeted and strategic approach rather than blanket protectionism.
Specifically, Bhutan should raise tariff on non-essential luxury imports, such as high-end vehicles and electronics, to 40 to 50% to conserve foreign exchange, and maintain zero or low tariff on capital goods and raw materials to encourage domestic investment, and apply a selective time-bound protective tariffs for sectors where Bhutan has productive potentials, such as dairy and vegetables, to avoid long-term inefficiency.
The key principle is that tariff should be a carefully calibrated instrument in Bhutan's trade policy toolkit, not a blind weapon for a blanket protectionism. So thank you all for your attention, and this concludes the panel discussion. Thank you.